What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you enjoyed the 2023 NFL Combine, which came to a close over the weekend. Very fun to have some sort of football action happening over the weekend. Lots of sports happening. Look, it's golf season. Baseball's coming back. Great Knicks Celtics game on Sunday night. F1 is back. There's all sorts of stuff, but we all obviously care more about football than anything. And with the NFL draft about a month away, free agency a little bit over a week away at this point in time, things are starting to get a little bit more exciting than they have been for the last couple of weeks. The Combine obviously came and went. We learned some things about the Cowboys, the way they're going to approach the roster over the course of the offseason. We'll get to that, as I mentioned, as free agency comes next week. But right now, we're going to talk about the Combine and some players that I think are important to pay attention to, some players that may ultimately wind up on the Cowboys. We obviously do not know, but players to know, players the Cowboys met with. The Cowboys are allowed formal visits, obviously, at the Combine, just like every other team in the NFL. They do have some informal ones. So each of these players had some sort of meeting with the Cowboys, which is significant. It is still very early in the process, but we can start to kind of own in on names that could potentially wind up with a star on their helmet. So we're going to start off with my favorite draft prospect. If I have to pick one player, if you gave me a magic one and you said I could make one player a Dallas Cowboy, it would be Ohio State wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba, my absolute favorite player in this draft class. We obviously interviewed him in the lead up to the Super Bowl. JSN, for my money, might be the best wide receiver in this class when it's all said and done. And I think that if the Cowboys want him, they're obviously going to have to take him in the first round if he even makes it all the way down to 26. And I do think it's notable that the Cowboys are meeting with him. We're going to talk about three more receivers in a minute besides JSN. But the fact that the Cowboys obviously are meeting with a wide receiver suggests that they know they have to make an addition on the offensive side of the ball. Now, there was a report in the lead up to the Combine or during the Combine last week about how the Cowboys are focused on adding some juice, an impact position player on offense. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. And look, I'm not trying to poo-poo the potential drafting of a wide receiver in the first round, but that's not necessarily going out and adding veteran talent. The Cowboys could certainly use a veteran wide receiver, whether that's by way of free agency, Odell Beckham Jr., I don't know, or by trade. If you want to talk about Stephon Diggs, if you're really dreaming, DeAndre Hopkins, Allen Robinson's apparently on the trade block now. Either way, the Cowboys have to add a lot, and JSN is a very talented athlete who can certainly help them in a lot of different ways. Again, a very productive player in college, not necessarily last year, obviously. Obviously, his 2021 season is the one that everybody kind of highlights, that Rose Bowl game that he had, he told us about. JSN, my favorite player. Good for the Cowboys meeting with him. That obviously had to happen. But a lot of people love Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee. A lot of people would rather have him if you gave them a magic wand to be able to wave and craft and weave and whatever. And he had himself quite the showing as well. We have some footage to kind of play with here. I don't know why this isn't playing. Here we go. Let's go. There we go, Jalen Hyatt. Look at this.
Here he is running his 40.
It's insane. 4.41 unofficial, obviously, with the podcast there.
1,267 receiving yards and 15 touchdowns.
I mean, and here's the thing. Let's play this again. It's going to take a second to start up, obviously. Or he's going to take a second to start up. If the Cowboys can come away with one of these wide receivers in the first round, I really would feel so much better about the state of the offense overall. And Jalen Hyatt is somebody who can really add an explosive element to this offense. And right now, that's the word. That's the big word when it comes to the offseason for the Cowboys is explosiveness. We know that CeeDee Lamb is an explosive player. We know that Tony Pollard, who we expect the Cowboys to franchise tag, at least at the time that I'm putting this video together, it hasn't happened officially. Those are the only two explosive players on this offense. You add JSN, you add Jalen Hyatt, you add another explosive player to your offense. You also get one if you add Jordan Addison out of USC. A lot of people love him as well. Jordan is another talented player.
May's pretty darn good too. So
the reality about
old people, they always talk about how they had to walk to school 5 miles uphill in the snow. But when you're a young scout back in the old days when I started, we had to go make sandwich runs. These guys are all in suites now with catered food. I feel like these young guys are not having to earn their stripes here as they're coming up through the personnel department.
Jordan Addison is somebody who,
you know what it's like trying to juggle 12 sandwiches as you're walking back? Yes, we're going to test you here because we're going to put the tracer on you. This is a player tracking data. This is Jordan Addison from USC. He definitely moved a little bit up on day 3 with what we've seen out here. We're seeing a little whip route now.
Size really does not matter.
Here's Jordan Addison, the Cowboys cut here.
Come around to that
and you see how smooth he is. Look at that.
The offseason gets ready to unfold. I mentioned we had 3 more wide receivers. We talked about JSN. We talked about Jalen Hyatt. We talked about not Zay Flowers. We talked about Jordan Addison. Now we're going to talk about Zay Flowers, who a lot of people love, maybe falls to the second round. This is the option you want to consider maybe if you go elsewhere in the first round. Again, we're going to still learn a lot about the draft as a whole in the coming month as everything kind of gets set, as we see some official visits, some 30 visits, things like that. And look, He is somebody who can add another level of explosiveness. It's hard to not watch these guys. It's hard, rather, to watch these guys and not get excited about what they could offer to the Cowboys offense as a whole. And that's what this time of year is all about, is finding players who you can add, who can really change the dynamic of what you do on a particular side of the ball. In this case, we're talking about the offense. It is no secret that the Cowboys, once again, have to get more explosive on the offensive side of the ball. So you give me any one of these 4 wide receivers that we're just talking about here today. Obviously, there's a lot of options, but Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jalen Hyatt, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, I'm all aboard. Sign me up. And yes, the Cowboys did draft Jalen Tolbert last year, and we have some hope for him. We have some hope for Michael Gallup coming back, his second year post-ACL injury, but you have to add. You cannot be light about this. You have to be aggressive. You have to add elite playmakers. Just draft JSN. Just do that, and we'll all be happy about that. But let's move on. If you want to add another explosive playmaker that isn't a wide receiver, fine. You can obviously go in the direction of tight end. This is a very, very, very talented tight end draft class, obviously entering the NFL. Luke Schoonmaker, the one we're going to talk about here today. Like I said, every single player on this list had some sort of meeting with the Cowboys, whether formal or informal, at the 2023 NFL Combine. And before, actually, let's go ahead and get his 40 up here.
Catches, they'll use him on some of those tight end screens.
I would love to see an explosive tight end added to the Cowboys, obviously, because that's a rarity in the NFL, right? Travis Kelce just hosted SNL. He's one of the only ones, right? You talk about, if I asked you to name the explosive tight ends in the NFL, not the good ones, the explosive ones, the players who can really change things when they are on the field for their teams.
They'll use them on some of those tight end
screens
screens there in that offense.
It's George Kittle, and Kyle Pitts is on his way, right? Darren Waller was kind of there for a moment. Remember when Jonnu Smith was there for a moment? It is a rare thing to have a tight end who can really explode, who can really be an elite down-the-field weapon, who can really generate a lot of yards after the catch. Luke Schoonmaker is one of those guys, potentially, but this is a really deep tight end draft class. And so while I'm not opposed to the idea of drafting a tight end early, the Cowboys have 2 talented players that we all believe in who they got late last year. Obviously, they took Jake Ferguson on the 3rd day of the draft in the 4th round, and they found and landed. I was trying to combine those 2 words, Peyton Hendershot and undrafted free agency. So I don't know that you have to overreact. I don't know that you have to come out and drop a 1st or 2nd round draft pick on the position, because the Cowboys, I think we don't give them enough credit for this. Look, I love Jason Witten, and it was a really obviously fun time with him being around forever the way he was for the Cowboys. But it's been kind of cool to watch them have to figure things out at tight end, and they've really done that. I mean, Jason Witten retired the first time, and a few days later, the Cowboys found Dalton Schultz in free agency. They found Blake Jarwin, obviously, in undrafted free agency a few years before then. Obviously, I just mentioned Jake Ferguson in the 4th round as well, like Dalton Schultz, and Peyton Hendershot, also undrafted free agency. You do not have to spend a premium resource there, but you do if you want to get some sort of elite Travis Kelce, George Kittle, like we talked about, production. So we'll see what the Cowboys end up doing there. Just a name to kind of pay attention to. This name is not going to make it to the Cowboys, if we're being honest. Look, I talked about the idea of going non-wide receiver in the 1st round, and if you want to go corner, a lot of what the Cowboys do in free agency is obviously going to affect that. If the Cowboys, for example, lose Anthony Brown and don't wind up with a veteran, I would love to see them sign, say, Patrick Peterson. But if they don't, the Cowboys are going to have a need at corner opposite of Trayvon Diggs, maybe even to replace Trayvon Diggs. We don't know. I mean, if we're talking about and considering all options, Trayvon is right now entering the final year of his contract. The Cowboys have said they're going to work on an extension with him. We'll see if that ultimately comes to pass. But Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State, favorite. I mean, I can't tell you anything about him that you don't already love in all likelihood. He is one of people's absolute favorite draft prospects, not just at corner, but across all positions. He can fly. I mean, this is a player, if you added him to your secondary to pair with Trayvon Diggs, at least for 2023, you would feel very, very, very good about it. But not to kind of gloss past this, there's just no world where Joey Porter Jr. makes it to the Cowboys, obviously, with the 26th overall pick. So you'd have to trade up to get him. And a lot of people obviously aren't comfortable with the idea of trading up. The other corner on this list, Keely Ringo out of Georgia. I mean, another player who can fly, another player who can really move. Well, I didn't know he could just replace the photos like that here on this platform. Look at that. That's pretty cool. 4, 3, just play this one more time because it happened so quickly. Again, if you, I have no problem going corner in the 1st round of the draft, obviously, for the Cowboys. Again, contingent upon what happens in free agency. If the Cowboys are unable to find a player opposite of Trayvon Diggs, if Anthony Brown walks, if they don't want to kick DeRon Bland outside, whatever, there are options. And that's what's fun about the draft, right? That's what's fun about mock drafts, his weaving potential paths. What is the best way to address and fix this team moving forward? Corner in the first round is a hard idea to scoff at. Let's see here. O'Cyrus Torrence out of Florida. A lot of people don't want to see the Cowboys go offensive line in the first round, but you draft him. Here's the thing. I think we all would love if Tyron Smith returned to the Cowboys in 2023. Goes without saying. But if he does return, you're kind of in this weird spot. It is a bit of a domino effect, right? If Tyron returns, I think your offensive line left to right is Tyron Smith, Tyler Smith, Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, and Terrence Steele. But what happens when Terrence Steele, or if Terrence Steele is not ready for the start of the season? The Cowboys are talking about like he will be. You're kicking Tyron Smith over to right tackle. Are you kicking Tyler Smith to left tackle? Who's playing left guard? If you draft O'Cyrus Torrence, you help yourself. If you draft O'Cyrus Torrence, maybe Tyron Smith is just your swing tackle. I mean, you have a lot of options suddenly if O'Cyrus Torrence is on your team, one of the best interior prospects in the draft. It makes sense that the Cowboys would obviously meet with him. We know the Cowboys are elite when it comes to scouting and developing offensive linemen. And so pay attention to this one. It is one possible direction. Obviously, the Cowboys could go in the first round. This is not a first-round option, all right? But the Cowboys did meet with some quarterbacks. We did want to talk about it, Max Duggan. And this one, I think, is interesting. He's obviously local, having played at TCU, and obviously was a big-time player in college football. But Mike McCarthy was asked about him, and a lot of the reason for that is because he's local, because it's TCU, because the TCU had a lot of success, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's going to be a name. That's my point. That's why we brought this up. Max Duggan is going to be a name, and we know the Cowboys we know that Mike McCarthy at least likes to draft and develop young quarterbacks. He's always done that dating back to his time with the Green Bay Packers. His first draft with the Cowboys, they did draft a quarterback. It took all the way until the 7th round in Ben DiNucci, but we know they're not afraid to do that. We know that Dak Prescott is the franchise quarterback of this team. This isn't to say that Max Duggan's going to come in and replace him or anything silly like that, but it does give the Cowboys some room for development, and you want that. You should be doing that. You should be drafting and developing quarterbacks, and Max Duggan had a lot of success at the collegiate level. That goes without saying, and so if you want to do that, you want to spend, a draft pick on a quarterback, I think you should on the 3rd day, obviously. And we'll see. I mean, it's so hard to gauge the quarterback market when it comes to the draft right now, outside of the first round of the consensus top guys. But Max Duggan is a name to pay attention to and a name to know because, again, he is local and his name's going to be connected to the Cowboys a lot throughout the process. The final name on this list, Hendon Hooker. Again, some of these things are chalk. Some of these things make sense. And it would make sense for the Cowboys to bring back Cooper Rush, obviously have your established veteran QB2. And if you don't get Cooper Rush, there are a lot of actually available veteran quarterbacks to be your backup that are going to be on the market this year. And if you want to draft, like I said, a quarterback, whether it's Duggan, whether it's Hooker, whoever the case may be, again, there are a lot of quarterbacks in the draft for development purposes. This makes sense. You never, ever, ever know when the clock is going to strike midnight on your franchise quarterback. So if the Cowboys want to draft Hendon Hooker, by all means, draft Jalen Hyatt as well so you can keep them together. That is it. 10 players that the Cowboys met with to some degree at the NFL Combine. Some thoughts on each of them. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa. On TikTok at rj.ochoa. You can send me an email if you'd like, rj.ochoa@spnation.com. Or you can leave a comment down below, and we'll do our best to get to those. For now, I bid you adieu. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have something great for lunch. And thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time.